So, because,
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Well, good afternoon, Senate Finance. Today is February 2nd, 2023. We have 7 bills that we will hear today in the following order. We'll hear Senate Bill 160, Senate Bill 48, Senate Bill 234, Senate Bill 79, Senate Bill 104, Senate Bill 26, and then Senate Bill 52. We have a number of witnesses signed up on the bills. We will have in-person and virtual witnesses on quite a few of the bills. So with that, let's begin with Senator Heddleman, who will present Senate Bill 160, Human Services, Temporary Cash Assistance, Calculation of Benefits. Good afternoon, Senator.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. Great to see you. Great to see members of the committee. I'm very happy to be here. I don't know how you would prefer to do it. Would it be okay to bring other folks up with me?
You are absolutely welcome to bring your panelist up.
That would be wonderful. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Happy to be here. We all sat across the way yesterday afternoon as we listened to our brand-new governor talk about his desire to eliminate child poverty. I believe, and I think you will hear from other folks who are going to testify today, that this bill goes directly to advance that goal, and it does so in a pretty straightforward way. Maryland is actually the only one of our neighboring states that right now calculates any kind of housing assistance that someone on temporary cash assistance receives as part of their income. And therefore, they are not able to get the full allowance from temporary cash assistance that they could otherwise be entitled to. We know that people on TCA are some of the that it's a social safety net program that provides cash assistance to some of the poorest in our communities, and many of whom are families with young children. And these are folks who need this kind of assistance for food, for transportation, for rent, for other kinds of basic needs. And in including public housing subsidies, like a housing choice voucher, like rental assistance, like if they happen to reside in public housing, we, through our regulatory system, are saying that that is counted as income, and therefore they are not entitled to an additional $60 per month that they would be under TANF, under the federal guidelines. So we are just asking to be in line with our neighboring states like Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, and to provide a little more cash assistance to these folks who desperately need it. So I ask for your support of this bill, and I'm going to turn it over to my other advocates who are with me who can more fully explain. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lisa Klingemeyer. I'm here today representing Welfare Advocates, which is a coalition that works for a strong safety net and programs that bring families to economic stability. We're here today in strong support of Senate Bill 160 because families shouldn't be penalized for accessing more than one safety net program. Maryland is one of the highest rates of deep poverty in the entire country. So what that means is for folks living in poverty in Maryland, 1 in 2 of them live at 50% of the federal poverty line or lower, which for a parent and a child is about $9,000 a year. For a parent and 2 children, that's about $12,000 a year. And unfortunately, a lot of these families are the same families on our safety net programs, because our safety net programs don't really bring families towards economic stability and out of poverty. Temporary cash assistance, the program this bill is about, is a program for children and their caretakers. 70% of folks on TCA are children. The way traditionally Maryland has calculated this benefit, based on what our statute says, is that we take 61.25% of the Maryland minimum living level, and then make it such that SNAP, our food stamp program, when combined with TCA equals that amount. So in real dollars, that's $575 a month for a parent and a child, or $727 a month for a parent with 2 children. Now, if that family is lucky enough to get a housing voucher, and those are extremely hard to secure, we take $60 away from that benefit. So for a family and a child, that's 10% of their benefit goes away. And housing vouchers are extremely important, but they can't be used to buy diapers, to buy medicine. And so we're penalizing families for accessing more than one benefit. If we want to move families to economic stability, we should enrolling them in all of the programs they're eligible for and giving them the maximum benefit possible. We strongly support this bill because we do believe it'll help move families out of poverty, closer to economic stability. We thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Michelle Medeo. I'm Director of Economic Justice with Homeless Persons Representation Project, and we strongly support SB 160. We provide free legal representation to families experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity, and we've worked with a number of families over the years who have been very harmed by this policy. SB 160 ends a harmful financial penalty that maintains racial disparities in access to TCA. So when we looked at the data from 2022, last year, we saw that 80% of the families who had been penalized, given the $60 penalty, were headed by a household member who was identified as Black or African American, compared to 64.5% in the population of TCA at large. We saw similar disparities with gender. There were 98% female recipients who were penalized compared to 91% in the TCA population at large. The overrepresentation of Black families in need of subsidized housing today can be traced to our country's racist and discriminatory housing practices, such as redlining, restrictive covenants. So aware of this history, we need to do what we can to end disparities in access to TCA. Now, this committee has done a phenomenal job of ending unfair and penalties in the TCA program in prior sessions, and we think this is the next step to move Maryland's TCA program in an anti-racist direction. And in doing so, as Senator Hettleman said, this will put Maryland in line with most other states' practices. So only 7 other states do what Maryland does. The other 43 states and DC don't count the housing subsidy as income, which lowers the TCA benefit. So thank you, and we urge a favorable report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Callie Shumitz. I'm with the Maryland Center on Economic Policy. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan research organization, and we believe that all Marylanders should be able to achieve their full potential in a healthy economy that offers a widely shared and rising standard of living. Here in support of Senate Bill 160, because we see cash assistance as something that goes hand in hand with the other safety net programs to create economic security for children and their families. Cash is flexible. It can be used for whatever the family needs, whether it's diapers, clothing, utilities, other needs. And we are all better off when families, and particularly children, experience greater economic security. Research shows that reducing poverty in childhood benefits children's health long-term, their success in school, and even earnings later in life. Therefore, we think it is important to use every tool we have to reduce the number of children experiencing poverty in Maryland. As you have heard from the prior speakers, and we'll hear from those after me, $60 a month is a really meaningful amount of money to the families receiving TCA, and there really is no good reason to continue reducing their cash assistance in this way. And finally, I will note that as with our other family income support programs, we also see them as good for local businesses. Families living on very low incomes will spend most or all of their income at local businesses purchasing basic necessities. So this is money that will go back into the communities. So, and one other note, I'm also the co-chair of Marylanders Against Poverty, which is an anti-poverty coalition with a long history in Maryland, and they have also submitted written testimony in support of this bill. So we'd ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 160. Thank you.
Good afternoon, greetings. My name is Cornelia Bright Gordon, and I am the Director of Advocacy at Maryland Legal Aid for Administrative Law. As you know, we come and testify before this committee annually. Maryland Legal Aid is Maryland's largest civil nonprofit law firm that provides free legal services exclusively to low-income individuals everywhere in the state of Maryland. I want to emphasize that we are here in support of Senate Bill 160, and I want to emphasize that the TCA program provides benefits exclusively to families, that the funds are all federal funds, and that the benefits are delivered on a short-term basis to individuals to assist them in reducing food insecurity and child poverty. The current Maryland process, which reduces TCA funds by the amount of a housing subsidy, is in direct contrast with current research on poverty reduction and the need to utilize the TCA funds to reduce instability among the poorest of families in our community. The Center on Budget and Family Priorities also notes that these funds provide assistance exclusively to families with the lowest incomes in the entire nation. We encourage you to note that SB 160 will address the inherent impropriety of reducing the limited funds supplied by TCA even further. The subtraction of a housing subsidy from a family's TCA grant undermines the purpose of the program, is patently unfair, and serves no purpose. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your testimony. Senator Hershey has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, very quickly, you had mentioned this is a priority of the governor broadly, right, broadly. I want to make sure. Yeah, no, broadly. But do you know, does his budget, this has a fairly large fiscal note, $3.2 million, $4.2 million a year. Do you know if his budget considers this, or if your committee would be working on the funding for this?
So to be determined. Actually, I'm in the Health Subcommittee that's meeting at the same time, and I'm going to have that conversation with my chairman.
Okay, all right.
But
To
if
my
I-
knowledge, it's not currently in, but go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yep. Yes.
I was just going to note that we did want to say, we think that there is some inflation in the fiscal note. The fiscal note assumes that families stay on the program for the full year. Most families on TCA actually stay on for less than that amount of time. It's temporary by definition. Also, the fiscal note, we did a FA or information request from the department, and there was 4,999 families that received this deduction last year. That's 20% less than the fiscal note, and caseloads have been trending down. TANF is a block grant. We get $228 million from the federal government. Currently, only 28% of that goes to cash benefits, so we firmly think in the budget of the program itself would be able to absorb this change.
Well, very good, because I think we'd all like to write our own fiscal notes, that's for sure. But I do appreciate that you have a very good explanation of it. So I'm sure the senator will be working on that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for those responses. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so thank you, Senator Hellman, for this bill. And I have a question. I think I heard you say that several other states are doing this now. They're not counting housing
Correct.
against the cash benefit. So which states are those? Do you remember which
That
states?
do not?
Do not, yeah.
You want to?
Thank you, Senator. So federal law gives, federal TANF law, temporary assistance for needy families, gives states the option of whether they consider housing subsidies as income or not. And so only, we looked at each state, it's in the TANF state plan where it would state that. And we looked at it and we found only 7 states that do what Maryland does. So the remaining 43 states and DC either don't mention it at all and that means they don't count it, or there are actually 19 states explicitly in their law or policy forbid the deduction. So we hope Maryland can join the majority.
Yeah, so Maryland will be playing catch-up to really help these populations. So if we go ahead and do this, would there be an offset? Is there any way that this benefit could offset something else, that, i.e. any unintended consequences, or it would be straight additional income for these families? Have you,
Well, I think, so if I'm understanding your question correctly, and please let me know if I misinterpreted it, the TCA benefit, the maximum a family can get, it's capped at a certain amount. For a family of two, it's $575. And if the family has any other income, that number decreases. So if the family is working, but the wages are pretty low, that would decrease the TANF benefit. We actually, my organization worked with a family who, this single mom had 2 part-time jobs, was also in school. Her earnings put her TANF benefit down to about $60, but because she lived in Section 8 housing, it actually bumped that down to 0. So the calculation looks different depending on if there's any other income that the family has. But for families that do live in subsidized housing, it would mean they'd be able to keep $60 that they're eligible for, instead of the Maryland Department of Human Services deducting it.
so, yeah, thank you for that. So that answer has taken me to where I want to go. So if these families receive additional monies through this bill, would it be counted against, say, their housing subsidy and say, oh, you have more income there, therefore your subsidy for housing goes down? Is that a possibility? Unintended consequence?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
We can also look into it and get
We
back
can
to you
do
with
that
more
research
certainty.
for you and
Yes.
provide that,
Please.
Senator.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I can follow up with you,
Yeah.
but it seems like most people think no. I think usually the rent in some of the subsidy programs is based on a percentage of the tenant's income, but we can definitely get back to you on that.
If you look at that, that'd be very important. We don't want to do something and there is a unintended consequence of taking away on the other side. So thank you, I appreciate you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any additional questions for this sponsor or the panel? Seeing none, thank you all so very much for your testimony. Have a good afternoon. Colleagues, we have some virtual witnesses on this bill. Signed up to speak in favor of the bill, Tennille Howard, who will be followed by Kenyari Slater. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Tennille Howard, and I'm testifying today on behalf of Senate Bill 160. Currently, I'm a full-time college student, single mother who received TCA benefits, and have previously lived in subsidized housing. With the increase in the cost of living in subsidized housing, I personally need all the financial assistance that I'm receiving in my TCA benefit to be able to take care of my family. No amount of money should ever be deducted from any TCA recipient benefits because they reside in subsidized housing. My son and I struggle every month to live off the TCA benefits I receive from the state of Maryland. Therefore, every amount of money I receive helps me and my family stay afloat. With that said, I urge you all to support Senate Bill 160. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions for you, so have a good afternoon.
You too. Thank you.
We're going to turn to Kenyari Slater. Good afternoon. If you could unmute for us.
I'm so sorry. Hello, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kenyari Slater. I'm a single full-time mother of 2. I have a toddler and I have an elementary school age child. I've been on TCA off and on, and every time I'm on TCA, it's always, a bunch of hurdles you have to jump in order to keep the case in good standing. It's just so much I can speak on, but I know I have less time to speak. I don't think it's right for them to take $60 extra out of the TCA benefits that we receive, because that extra $60 does help in some cases. If you're a subsidized housing person like myself, I have to take a percentage out there to pay my rent, to pay my BG&E, and whatever cases I may need to use it for my children or how we get around because I don't have a vehicle. So I do feel like the extra $60 does help and does come in handy, and I don't think it's fair. So I do hope that you guys do support Bill 160, because it would help a lot of us, single mothers who are still like trying to go to school and trying to, get better careers so we don't have to be on CCA.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony and for sharing your story and your situation. I don't see any questions from the committee, so have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you want me to say it into the mic, or? Senator Klossmeyer would like her intern to come up. All right.
I mean, I could have said it, but
You could have just. Okay, good afternoon, colleagues. We're going to turn to Senate Bill 48. Senator Lamb, oops, no, that person's not. Senator Lamb, Disaster Service and Uniformed Services Leave Modernization Act of 2023. Senator, you can bring up your witnesses and proceed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. With me, I have Jonathan Bratt on the sponsor panel. So good afternoon, everyone, members of the committee. Good to see all of you again, and happy to be here to be able to testify and introduce Senate Bill 48. For the record, Clarence Lamb, Senator in District 12. This bill updates Maryland's Employee Disaster Service Leave Law to include several disaster responders who are currently unable to utilize this benefit. It also brings Maryland law more in line with federal statute, which is more inclusive of members of the uniformed services. So in federal law, there's a distinction between uniformed services and armed services. Uniformed services extends to include the National Disaster Medical System, the U.S. Public Health Service, the National Urban Search and Rescue and Response System, and a few other disaster-related responders. Currently, Maryland law regulates, or requires rather, state agencies to provide paid disaster leave to members of the Red Cross. However, there are several other organizations that may need to utilize state employees during a disaster. For example, this could include the Civil Air Patrol or volunteer rescue squads. And if these individuals are asked to serve during an emergency, they may have to use their regular leave or their paid time off to be able to step away from their state jobs in order to respond to a disaster. This bill provides for up to 15 days per year of disaster leave unless the state agency employing the individual approves an extended leave in order to support a longer emergency. So the department that they normally work for has the ability to kind of extend that as well, that time period. And that's actually, I think, in current statute. Additionally, the bill updates the sections of law dealing with leave related to military training or service. Currently, leave is provided to members of the U.S. military and active reserves. However, this leaves out Maryland employees who are also part of the U.S. Public Health Service Commissioned Corps, which is a federal uniform service that is not part of the military per se. It also would include the National Urban Search and Rescue Response Team and certain other FEMA personnel as well. Adding uniformed services to the state's military training and service leave requirements will help ensure that Maryland state employees can continue to serve as part of these important federal organizations while also employed in the same way to help serve in Maryland agencies as well. A definition for emergency manager is also added in this bill because there's currently none in statute. Otherwise, there's no real legal change from this. That's a clarifying technical piece. If you look at the written testimony that was submitted for this bill, MACO also had some suggested amendments that are mostly technical in nature. For example, it clarifies that this bill is not directed to local emergency managers. We would accept all of those as technical amendments. And with that, that's the bill. Pretty straightforward. I'll turn it over to Mr. Bratt.
Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this important bill. My name is Jonathan Bratt, and I appear before you as an advocate for community resilience and disaster preparedness. I have over 20 years of experience in disaster response and can, with firsthand knowledge, testify that this bill will have a positive impact on Maryland and its residents. With regards to disaster service leave, since the existing disaster service leave policy was enacted, a host of additional service organizations have formed and now represent a key component of our state's ability to provide disaster relief and recovery. Organizations like Community Emergency Response Teams, Maryland VOAD, local fire departments, and of course the Red Cross, as well as many others. SB 48 aims to expand the availability of disaster service leave to support these valuable nonprofit organizations during a time of crisis. With regard to the uniformed services, over the past decade, we've recognized the need to improve the federal response to domestic emergencies. Through that lens, the CARES Act established under President Trump the Public Health Service Reserve Corps in 2020, and President Biden recently signed the CREW Act, which establishes the FEMA Disaster Reserve Workforce. Both are considered non-armed civilian components of the federal uniformed services. These new organizations, along with a few other already existing, represent the front lines on the battle against pandemics, climate change, terrorism, and natural disasters. They operate almost identically to their armed services partners and are often embedded within the armed services operations. SB 48 aims to expand leave protections to state employees who choose to serve in these new but important components of the federal disaster response capability. These policies represent a win-win for Maryland as we provide resources to our most vulnerable community members at, as the fiscal note states, little to no financial or operational impact to the state. Finally, SB 48 aims to define emergency managers in statute for the ease of including them in future public safety-related legislation. Emergency managers are an important component of the state's public safety capability. They serve shoulder to shoulder with their first responder colleagues and are often the last personnel to leave a major emergency or disaster. I appreciate the opportunity to testify and urge favorable consideration.
Thank you very much. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Lamb, for this bill. And I just a couple questions. So when we talk about the uniformed services, we think about the armed forces and, of course, the non-armed forces with the Public Health Service and the National Oceanic Administration folks. So, and you mentioned some other people in addition to that. And I think your witness mentioned some other agencies were added to that list of uniformed services by, was it by act of Congress?
Yes, sir.
Recently? So, okay. So I think, Senator Lamb, you named a lot more than, I think, what's your name, sir, again?
Jonathan Bratt.
Ms. Bratt mentioned. So could we kind of clarify that a bit? And if you could
Sure.
say the agencies on your list, and then we compare it to your list and try
So-
to understand which ones.
Yes, happy to do so. And if you actually want it in writing, it is on the second page of the fiscal note. It says that
Okay.
the uniformed services includes obviously the armed forces, as you cite. It includes those who are engaged in active duty, inactive duty, and full-time National Guard duty. It also includes the Commissioned Corps of the U.S. Public Health Service, the Commissioned Corps officers of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. It includes the system members of the National Urban Search and Rescue Response System. It includes personnel who are appointed into the Federal Emergency Management Agency Service, FEMA, obviously, as identified and designated by the President of the United States during a time of war or national emergency.
Yeah, okay. So the additional two, which is search and rescue folks, and those are pretty much state folks that are called up in case of earthquake, and
Right.
they head out to wherever the emergency or search and rescue. And FEMA, of course, is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So all those, and those are the two you mentioned, sir?
Yeah,
additional?
the ones that are not specific, that were mentioned but not specifically mentioned there are, there's a new FEMA Disaster Reserve Corps that was signed into law last month, actually, and that's under FEMA, as
Okay.
Senator Lamb mentioned. The other one is the National Disaster Medical System.
National
Disaster Medical System, which used to be part of FEMA, it's now part of the Department of Health and Human Services, and
Medical.
is essentially a civilian component, a civilian version of the National Guard for medical purposes.
Right, so if there was a need for like an emergency hospital to be stood up, NDMS would oftentimes have resources to stand up like tent hospitals and whatnot.
Yeah, okay. So those additional ones in the fiscal note also? The one, the national disaster?
I believe they're probably
Medical
covered on, I think most of those folks are covered under the U.S. Public Health Service. So, they're probably a subset in
Substitute for-
here.
Okay, public health service. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the sponsor panel? Seeing none, thank you very much. That will conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 48. Colleagues will now turn to Senate Bill 234. Vice Chair Klossmeyer will present Health Services Cost Review Commission, Hospital Rates, All-Payer Model Contract. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's good to see all of you. It's been a while. That was a joke. Anyway, it is good to be here, and this is the first bill of this session for me. And Senate Bill 234, Health Services Cost Review Commission, Hospital Rates, All-Payer Model Contract. Senate Bill 234 is a simple bill that only makes a technical change to the Health Services Cost Review Commission statute. This change provides the Commission with the authority to consider the total cost of care model with developing the standards used to determine the reasonableness of hospital rates. As I'm sure this committee knows, the total cost of care model is an agreement between the state and the federal government. The model benefits the state by improving health care quality, investing in population health and primary care, and constraining health care cost. Maryland's hospital rate setting authority is a key tool that the state uses to meet required targets under the TCOC model, total care. Should Senate Bill 234 be enacted, this section of HSCRC statute will align with the other sections that already require the Commission to consider the total cost of care model in their work. On my sponsor panel, I'm joined by Katie Wunderlich and Megan Renfrew from the Maryland Health Services Cost Review Commission. I thank the committee for their time, and I'm requesting a favorable report.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Megan Renfrew, and I'm the Associate Director of External Affairs at the Maryland Health Services Cost Review Commission. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today. As the sponsor noted, Senate Bill 234 provides the Health Services Cost Review Commission with the authority to consider the total cost of care model as a factor when developing the standards used to determine the reasonableness of hospital rates. In addition to the benefits of the total cost of care model that were mentioned by the sponsor, the model provides stability for hospital finances, which was particularly important during COVID, ensures equitable funding for uncompensated care, and brings other benefits to the state. We did give a briefing on the model last week. The HRCRC adjusts hospital rates to meet the contractual requirements under the total cost of care model, in addition to obligations we have under our statute. The HSCRC statute already requires the Commission to take the total cost of care model into account in other aspects of the rate-setting process. This just adds one additional reference to the contract to our rate-setting statute. The amendment conforms in that way with other references to the contract in the law. This bill will not change how we review hospital rates, as we already consider our contractual requirements under the model. As we noted, we think this is just a technical change to the law, and we urge a favorable report on Senate Bill 234. I am joined here by our Katie Wunderlich, who is our Executive Director, and she's here to help me with questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the sponsor or panel? Senator Lamb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick technical question. It sounds like this is very technical, and it's really just aligning this part of the statute with other parts of the statute that had already been clarified. Was this just kind of missed as part of earlier drafting revisions to, it looks like it's mostly section 19-219 and 220 had already been updated. This subsection was just missed, I guess.
Yeah, so we did a big update in 2020 that added a number of references to the model. That was right after the total cost of care model started in 2019, and we missed the spot.
Okay. And this is just aligning it with current practices that
Yeah.
you're engaging in anyway. Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Any additional questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. That concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 234. We will now turn to Senate Bill 79. Senator Kramer, who's presenting State Personnel Education and Transportation Grievance Procedures. Good afternoon, Senator. I see your panel coming.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair. Good afternoon to the committee. Colleagues, this is a pretty straightforward bill about parity and equivalency within our state employees. In 2017, the Maryland General Assembly passed into law a provision that allows for state employees within all of the state agencies in the executive branch to be able to grieve when their paychecks were not properly associated with the work that was done. So whether the employee is shortchanged on the number of hours, shortchanged on what it is they were paid per hour, or whether they had certain benefits that were due and were not paid, we decided it was appropriate to give them the opportunity to grieve over the issue, to seek a correction to their paycheck, because it's very important that these hard-working state employees who are doing their work get paid what they are in fact owed. In 2017, and my understanding, the reason that our state employees in the university system, as well as those in MDOT, were not part of that is that they had a different software package and it did not align with what the state had. My understanding is that those software packages are now all the same, and the bill before you simply provides the same opportunity for our state employees within the university system and MDOT that we give all the other state employees. The opportunity to grieve, and as part of that process, if after 30 days' notice, the managers, the state, have not actually corrected the shortfall, then the employee is permitted to have an addition added to their wages. The whole idea here is to incentivize the employer to, when brought to their attention, paycheck's been shorted, act on it. Don't make this employee miss opportunities to make a car payment, make a house payment, make an insurance payment, put food on their tables by virtue of the employer's failure to correctly pay the employee. We do it now for all of these other state employees. The time to bring parity to the remaining state employees is here now. There's no reason not to. My understanding, and we'll hear shortly from the university system, is that if they are sincere in the written testimony that they have provided that they will support it if, in their belief, it is more narrowly tailored. They're representing, and I'll be happy to have that conversation when they come to the table as to why they think the bill as drafted goes beyond what I am representing to you all is the intent of the bill. But they have indicated that with that understanding that we ensure what the purpose intent is met, that they would support the legislation. So with that, Madam Chair, I thank you all committee.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Denise Gilmore. I am the Legislative Director with AFSCME Council 3. Thank you so much, Senator Kramer, for bringing this bill forward, and as usual, doing an excellent job explaining it. We do have a couple of members that will also be testifying today, so I'll leave my remarks relatively quick. I just wanted to reiterate that our goal absolutely is to ensure that our members, the state employees who work in our university systems and in the Department of Transportation, have the same access to be able to grieve over paycheck issues, and to be able to grieve and accrue damages eventually if those aren't corrected quickly. I can say that since 2017, since the General Assembly has authorized this practice for state employees in our executive branch, we've been able to get paycheck issues resolved much faster, oftentimes before damages even begun accruing. And our goal simply with this bill is to provide that same opportunity for our members in higher education in the Department of Transportation. So we would very much appreciate appreciate a favorable report on SB 79. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Alethea Woodland, and I'm a member of AFSCME Local 365. I had a pay issue. I worked 96 hours, and I only got paid 80 hours. And I'm just asking for this bill to be passed because I think that I deserve, to be treated like other state agencies as far as getting the pay I work for. I volunteered to work overtime, and due to the fact that I didn't get paid what I supposed to got paid, my cell phone got cut off, and I went to management and asked them to correct the situation, and it's still like I'm getting the runarounds back and forth, and it hasn't been corrected. So I'm asking for this bill to be supported like other state agencies. That's all.
Madam Chair, and I believe we also have a member in the waiting room to testify. Oh, gotcha. Thanks. I'm so excited.
I know, it's exciting. Okay, Senator Ellis, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So, question, I thought one of the most sacred aspects of our worker protection laws is their paycheck. So it's like you have an issue with not being paid for hours you work, you go straight to like the Department of Labor, and they have attorneys that will go and fix that for you. So why would we need this law to kind of, what's not working with that basic
Sure.
policy laws to make sure our workers get paid for hours worked?
So the biggest rub, I think, is just in the amount of time that it can sometimes take to get these paycheck issues resolved. I mean, look, the state processes thousands of paychecks a pay period, right? Like, we understand that mistakes can happen. But we've heard horror stories of, employees taking sometimes 8 months to get a paycheck resolved because they missed an overtime payment. The ability to accrue damages, from what I understand, is a pretty common practice in the private sector when paychecks are messed up. We just don't have that in the public sector for these specific employees in transportation and higher education. We do have that ability for the state employees who work at like the Department of Health or Public Safety. It's just in 2017 when, those issues were really happening in those agencies, they're on a separate personnel system, so they weren't included in that 2017 bill.
Okay, thank you. So previous state law protect other workers from other agencies, but for transportation and the educational sector, colleges, they were granted exemption. Is that what you're saying?
Or more that they just weren't added, not so much an exemption. They just, at the time that we were seeking the, 2017 fix, the big issues were happening in the state agencies because of the Workday transition. We've seen since 2017, again, that we've, been able to, in many instances, solve the lengthy delays that used to occur for state employees in the executive branch by being able to, attach this provision to a paycheck, dispute that accrues damages eventually. We just don't have that for employees in the Department of Transportation and in the university system because they're on independent personnel systems. And unfortunately, those issues have, continued to be a problem in those areas, and so we think this would be a really great fix for transportation and higher ed as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions for the sponsor or the panel? Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you for sharing your story. We are going to have the 2 additional witnesses who are here, and then we call the virtual witnesses after that. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we'll now hear from Carolyn Sklonick and Sherry Roxas, if you're here. Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Griffith, Vice Chair Klausmeier, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to offer testimony on Senate Bill 79. My name is Sherry Rojas, and I am the Director of Labor for the USM office. I think we can all relate to experiencing the frustration of payroll errors and can sympathize with the undue hardship it can cause. Our institutions work hard to avoid payroll errors and to correct those mistakes quickly. The USM has 2 main concerns with this bill. It fundamentally alters our definition of a grievance, and it awards damages in the amount of 30% per pay period, up to 3 times the amount due. Importantly, under the USM's long-standing grievance procedure, codified in the education article and contained in board policies, a grievance is defined to include a dispute between the employee and employer on the interpretation or application of policies, rules, or procedures over which institutions have control. This includes a specific employee grievance over application of the overtime rate, the failure to process an increase in pay upon promotion, or other individual payroll disputes. An avenue for resolution exists. A grievance does not include the general level of wages or other broad areas of financial management. The concern with this bill is that by permitting a grievance on these topics to move forward, employees could grieve practically anything and everything. An employee could grieve a state-funded and approved 2% COLA, arguing that it should have been 5%, or dispute the pay structure itself, or dispute staffing levels or the allocations of funds to specific priorities. The grievance possibilities are endless under this bill, and a hearing officer would ultimately end up deciding these issues. Senate Bill 79 would hold institutions liable for treble damages over things that they may have no control, like if there's a glitch with the Central Payroll Bureau system, for example. The USM would be happy to engage in discussions over appropriate amendments. We believe that the intent of the bill can be kept intact with a clarifying change to the USM grievance procedure under the education article. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Senator Ellis.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, ma'am, for your testimony. So you threw out some numbers, and I'm trying to I will ask questions to clarify. You said there's a 30% penalty up to 3 times the amount due?
Correct.
So could you break that down for me again, please, as far as if someone is shorted say $100, okay, what's the 30% and what's it 3 times?
So if somebody's shorted $100, 3 times that amount would be $300. So the way that it would apply under this statute is every pay period going forward that the issue is not corrected, an employee would be entitled to 30% of the wages due. So taking that $100 amount in that first missed pay period where the issue is not corrected, the employee would be entitled to $30 or 30% of that 100. And that would continue until that reached a maximum of up to 3 times the amount due. So once it reached that $300 amount, 3 times $100, that's the maximum that would be awarded in damages.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kramer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize, I didn't catch your name. It's
Sherry Rojas.
Ms. Wilcox?
Rojas, R-O-X-A-S.
Rojas, thank you.
Yeah,
My
yes.
apologies, Ms.
No worries.
Rojas. Hearing's not what it used to be. Thank you. Couple of questions. You indicated that this fundamentally changes the grievance process. Would you specifically point to where it is in the bill that you have this interpretation or the university has this interpretation, so that I have a better understanding of how you've come to this interpretation?
Sure, absolutely. Under the bill, there is a section which states not otherwise withstanding the provisions of the grievance procedure under the education article, that a grievance could not be denied or dismissed because it related to these areas, the general level of wages or other broad areas of financial management, fringe benefits. That is where we think there's a fundamental change in the definition of a grievance, the way that this bill is drafted. Because if we cannot deny or dismiss a grievance that's filed on general level of wages or other broad areas of financial management, it would move forward through the grievance process. And ultimately, a hearing officer would be given the authority to decide those issues.
So
an
let me,
employee-
oh, I
I'm sorry.
apologize, go ahead.
So an employee could say dispute, as I mentioned, if a 2% COLA is implemented for employees in the university system, an employee could file a grievance saying that they think it should be 5%. Or we have had instances where an employee has filed a grievance saying that the institution, a particular institution, should have closed during a snow-related weather event. And that's something that we believe falls within the broad financial authority of the institution.
So in other words, if the employee is shortchanged 20 hours in their paycheck, that does not fall under general levels of wages, that, I was supposed to have been paid $500 in this period, I received $250, $300, whatever it may be, and you're asserting that that would not be under general levels of wages, or if, for instance, an employee was routinely being shortchanged every pay period, let's say 10 hours, that would not be part of a wage pattern? Is that what you're concerned with? Or is it more the very last enumerated item there, other broad areas of financial management and staffing? Is that specifically what concerns you in the way the bill is drafted?
The concern is with those exclusionary terms that are already excluded under the definition of a grievance currently under the education article. So all 4 of those enumerated things is where we would have a concern. We would say that an employee would have the right to file a grievance under the existing grievance procedure under the education article over their specific employee issue. So the example that you gave where an employee is being shortchanged for hours that they work, we have policies in place that state that an employee should be paid for the hours that they work. So they would be able to file a grievance saying that the policy was not interpreted or applied correctly to them under our existing grievance procedure.
So my understanding is under your existing grievance procedures, the university system has said mistakes with payroll checks are not included. So let me ask you this. Under existing law, in state personnel and pensions, for all other employees that are state employees, we have the following language. If an appointing authority does not report payroll information in accordance with this article, The employee or the employee's exclusive representative may initiate a grievance under the grievance procedure established under the appropriate title and subtitle of this article. If we were to take that exact language verbatim and transfer it into the education article so that the same grievance procedures that apply to every other state employee would apply to the university system, would you support the bill, as you had indicated, favorable with an amendment to ensure that the goal of the bill, which is the language I just read to you, is what passes, because your interpretation of what's in the bill right now is that it goes beyond that? So would the university system then, as you indicated, if we made sure we accomplished the goal without broadening, we would support the bill? So is that in fact the circumstance?
The USM would absolutely be happy to engage in discussions over appropriate amendments. As long as the final version of it does not go beyond what we believe is the intent of the bill, we would be absolutely happy to support that and 100% committed to having those discussions and open to amendments.
But we need to go beyond the discussions. We need a commitment that if we ensure the language reflects the intent, and the intent is not to have employees be able to grieve over whether there's a snowstorm and they have to come to work. That's not the intention or the purpose. It's to make sure those employees who are shortchanged have a process to have restitution and have it made timely. And are we on the same page with that?
Yeah, again, I think that we'd be happy to have those discussions and work with your office on amendments.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Any further questions for this witness? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
We do have one virtual witness signed up, Jean Peckney. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Jean Peckney. I have worked at the university for 25 years and have been an ASPE member for the 23 years since we won our union. I'm here today to testify in support of SB 0079. Over the years, we have seen all sorts of members not get their proper pay. They don't get all their overtime, their shift differential is missing, or someone just put their time in wrong. In all of these cases, we have had to plead with management to fix these problems with no guaranteed timeline for resolution and the inability to get damages like other state employees. Payroll errors like this cause undue stress to our members when they can't pay their bills because their paycheck is not correct. But this isn't about past problems. It's also about problems now. We have members coming to us telling us they are not being paid for the hours they work. They have offer letters saying they'll get overtime, but their manager simply tells them the extra work is part of the job. This bill would ensure our members are paid properly and management is held accountable. For example, we have members who are often asked to come in and set up work site before other staff like the next shift come in. Managers aren't coding that as work time and effectively stealing time. This bill is essential to stopping this practice and ensuring our members are paid what they are owed and on time. Last but very important, one of the drivers of this bill originally being enacted is the workday payroll being so messed up. We have seen that in the state time and time again, as well as more recently with Baltimore City payroll problems. This is the program the USM is adopting, and we have no faith that it will get any better. I hope I can count on you for our support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions, so thank you very much for your testimony. Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Colleagues, that concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 79. We'll now turn to Senate Bill 104, Senator Augustine, presenting Labor and Employment Apprenticeships and Representation of the Apprenticeship and Training Council. Good afternoon, Senator. I see you're bringing your panel up. That's great.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you.
Thank you, Chair. If it's okay, could I have Mr. Greenhill come as well? Larry Greenhill? If not, that's okay, too. He just made the trip.
I don't have him
No
signed up,
worries.
Senator. Thanks.
That's okay. All right, no problem. So Senator Malcolm Augustine here, Senate Bill 104, Labor and Employment, Apprenticeship, and Representation on the Apprenticeship and Training Council. Colleagues, this bill, those of you who were here last year or a part of the Senate would recognize it as Senate Bill 926, which was passed by the legislature and then was subsequently vetoed by the governor. I've brought it back as a piece of legislation that we as a body worked through and made compromises and came to something that we all felt comfortable sending forward, and I'm hoping that we will be able to do the exact same this year. What this aims to do is really, this is about workforce development programs and apprenticeships in the Maryland workforce to try to make sure that they are becoming better equipped for high demand occupations that we have. You all know this, we have a tremendous need. We have a lot of actually opportunities out there that really still need to be filled, and workforce development is central to things that we will be doing going forward and that we have to continue to do. And that's what this piece of legislation does, to try to work to make sure, though, that our apprenticeship programs are diverse in Maryland, and that we also, this bill also was done in conjunction between Senators Rosapep and Senator Patterson that did two different things. And so Senator Patterson's portion of it expanded language to include apprentice training council members and consultants to be representative of Black and Latino communities. And then Senator Rosapep established within this piece of legislation the Apprenticeship 2030 Commission goal to examine and make recommendations to expand access to apprentice in high-demand occupations to provide young people affordable training. And it went on further to provide workforce development funds for Marylanders. So as I said, this piece of legislation is something that we've already worked on, we worked through. These are the things that it does, and I would ask for a favorable report one more time on Senate Bill 104, and I then will turn over to my lead sponsor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and Vice Chair, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Finance Committee. My name is William Taylor. I'm from Prince George's County, Maryland. I'm the past chair of the Maryland State Apprenticeship Council, where I served for 14 years. My purpose here today is to support Senate Bill 104 that will include representatives by Black, Latino, females, and individuals with disabilities. In addition, consultants to the council shall include representation by Black, Latino, females, and individuals with disability. This will help to ensure the Maryland Apprenticeship Council has diversity in gender and race in its sponsored program. We have developed a deep, abiding commitment to ensure that there is a balanced representation in employment opportunities. I'm an advocate for opportunities that will support diversity in the workplace and allow all individuals to become productive and contributing members for our society. I applaud the enhanced focus on Senate Bill 104, includes diversity in the Maryland Apprenticeship and Training Council, and the council should look like people it serves and need representation of all eligible workers. Additional, more diverse council will help with recruiting and increase the diversity of apprentices. I understand there's a shortage of skilled workers in several trade areas. A number of our communities have untrained workers who could fill these vacancies with the help of apprenticeship. A more diverse apprenticeship council will help the needs of employers and the employed workforce. Also includes female, Black, Latino, the disabled, and other minorities on the council will only improve workforce development and working conditions within the state of Maryland. We cannot afford to lose sight of diversity at this crucial junction. I ask for the necessary action to ensure that the Maryland Apprenticeship and Training Council include representative Black, Latino, and females and persons of disability and a favorable vote of the bill. And I thank everyone for being here today.
Thank you. It's always good to see you, Mr. Taylor, and shout out to my constituent, Mr. Greenhill.
Thank you so much.
That's not the reason why I mentioned.
Yeah, I know you thought I could do it because it's my constituent, but I have to be fair. Everybody would have looked at me wrong. So it's good to see you as always, sir. Thank you. I don't see any questions from the committee, so thank you very much for your testimony. That will conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 104. And colleagues, we will have now Senate Bill 26, Senator Augustine presenting Maryland Medical Assistance Program, Maryland Children's Health Program, and Social Services Programs, eligibility and enrollment. We have in-person and virtual witnesses totaling 13 signed up on this bill. So, good afternoon, Senator.
It's okay. Laura, it's fine. You could continue. All right. Who said that? I heard it. I like it. Oh, well, there's that too. All right. I was looking for the other all favorable. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Senator Malcolm Augustine here with Senate Bill 26, Maryland Medical Assistance Program, Maryland Children's Health Program, and Social Service Programs, eligibility and enrollment. Colleagues, this is about Marylanders who face real-life challenges. That's what this bill is truly about. I mean, this bill is really largely about our children who are hungry and lacking health care. This bill is about our seniors and our veterans who are trying to decide between eating, paying their electric bill, or getting health care services. That's really what this thing is really, truly about. You know, I think that we don't think about having to make those types of calls, those types of decisions in our lives. But we have a lot of our Marylanders who are facing that every single day. They have to make that decision every single day. And colleagues, we got to do everything we can to help our fellow Marylanders who find themselves in these difficult circumstances. And that's what this bill aims to do. This bill aims to streamline the process by which people are able to access our safety net services when they find themselves at some of their most difficult times. As it stands right now, there are multiple applications that you got to go through that are actually also difficult to work well through, as you all well know, in order to access benefits that many Marylanders are eligible for, leaving a significant number of Marylanders who are eligible for benefits not actually getting to the benefits that they actually are eligible for. And so this includes Medicaid, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and I'm spelling it out because I know sometimes we use the acronyms and people don't necessarily know the acronyms. That's SNAP, like people are typically pretty used to that. And energy assistance programs. And I mentioned it, but I said it once, but Medicaid, of course, you all have it in here. That's our health care, including for children. CHIP program, so that's health care for our kids as well, where we're trying to make sure that it's much easier for folks to be able to access that. And we do that by establishing an express lane eligibility program. And so it's basically like it says, listen, if you qualify based on your income for one, you qualify for them all, which, by the way, you do. I mean, they do. Like, that's the main criteria typically for most of these programs, but we have them in these different silos so that you apply in one place, it doesn't necessarily translate into the other. And so what we're going to do is we're going to require the Department of Human Services to enroll eligible individuals in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. We're going to require the Office of Home Energy Programs to enroll eligible individuals in certain Office of Home Energy Program assistance programs. We're also looking to alter the eligibility requirements for the Electric Universal Service Programs to 200% of the federal poverty line. This is for energy assistance programs. The members who were here a couple of years ago may recall that this committee, in our crisis that we had legislation that dealt with this, and we increased the federal poverty line for Marylanders, for seniors. Now we're looking to extend it, just understanding that, this is an important benefit for many of our low-income Marylanders. And so that's what that piece of the legislation does. It requires the Maryland Department of Health to enroll individuals in the Maryland Medical Assistance Program, Medicaid, and the Maryland Children's Health Program, CHIP, as I mentioned. Marylanders who are eligible for safety net services currently have to complete and renew annually multiple applications, which are reviewed by different agencies. The result is administratively burdensome to those completing the applications and inefficient from a state agency perspective. Because of the complicated process, many Marylanders are not receiving or not renewing Medicaid or energy assistance benefits. A majority of the needed documents to verify these various ones are income eligible, as I mentioned, for SNAP and for temporary cash assistance. So we have like 30,000 SNAP households who claim a heating or cooling expense that do not actually receive. They qualify for it. But 30,000 that qualify based on SNAP that are not getting that energy assistance right now. Because it's just the two programs, they don't communicate. There's no way for those two to come together. Similarly, with Medicaid enrollment, based on our census data, we have about 65,000 folks who are uninsured residents who also receive SNAP benefits. And with the passage of this, where we're requiring that enrollment, we would see almost 60,000 Marylanders taken off of those uninsured rolls, which of course we know is one of the things we work very hard. We've worked very hard in this committee. We worked very hard in the Senate to get much closer to full insurance for Marylanders. And significantly amongst this group, 23,000 of which are African Americans, 28,000 Latinos. As I mentioned earlier, these are some of the folks who have the greatest number of challenges, and this will help to close that health equity gap that we also know is a priority of our legislature. So we look to streamline and create one eligibility process, allowing for additional families to be served with much little to no administrative costs increase for the overall system. The bill will prevent families from losing benefits due to needless duplicative paperwork and requirements. And so I've shared with you all what this bill does, and I just really ask for you all support. My panel will talk about the other elements and their take on this piece of legislation. I would ask for a favorable report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Chair Griffith and members of the Senate Finance Committee, thank you for this opportunity to testify in favor. I'm Stephanie Clapper, Deputy Director of the Maryland Healthcare for All Coalition. I'm here on behalf of the over 300 faith, business, labor, community, and healthcare organizations from across the state that all believe in the power of auto-enrollment to help our most vulnerable Marylanders get the healthcare that they need. And there should be a flyer in your written testimony of just some of those 300 organizations. Under your committee's leadership, we have gotten over 400,000 Marylanders enrolled in health coverage since the passage of the Affordable Care Act. We've passed first in the nation legislation like the Easy Enrollment Program, which helps Marylanders get enrolled at tax time by checking a box on their state tax return, and we've done the same thing with unemployment insurance forms. But there's more that we need to do. 6% of Marylanders remain uninsured, and this legislation would be a great step forward to get us closer to 0% uninsured. Over 65,000 Marylanders would be able to get Medicaid automatically through this program, and at the same time, it would eliminate paperwork for over 500,000 SNAP recipients who are already enrolled in Medicaid. When the public health emergency ends and Medicaid redeterminations start, this program could help people stay on the critical health care that they need in order to take care of themselves and their families, while at the same time reducing the administrative burden for the state of Maryland government. In other states that have done a similar program for children, they've saved over $1 million just in administrative costs per year. This bill would also improve other social determinants of health, and so I would like to thank you and your committee again for your leadership and urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Griffith and members of the Senate Finance Committee. Thank you all for lending us the opportunity to speak today. My name is J.D. Robinson, and I am the Program Coordinator for SNAP at Maryland Hunger Solutions. We are a statewide, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to end hunger and improve the nutrition, health, and well-being of all Marylanders through outreach and advocacy. For over 10 years, we have assisted anyone in Maryland seeking food assistance through applying for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Thank you for spelling it out, also known as SNAP, formerly known as food stamps. And for the past 3 years, we have done this through using a toll-free hotline where we field anywhere between 400 and 500 callers per month seeking assistance with their SNAP benefits. On average, anywhere between a quarter and a half of those folks are asking for additional resources pertaining to heat, energy, or health care. Applying for these benefit programs is not an easy task. We equate applying to SNAP like doing your taxes. It's time-consuming, headache-inducing, and can often require the help of a navigator that can assist you with the entire process. To continue to ask low-income individuals to repeat this process multiple times over multiple programs over the course of years on years only increases their frustration and their distrust in programs. Ensuring automatic enrollment through this legislation can greatly alleviate the burden these families face and reduce administrative time and effort that caseworkers have for reviewing them. And each of these benefits will be critical as households continue to navigate the loss of multiple pandemic-related programs, including the nearly $70 million a month in SNAP that the state will be losing in federal funding starting this March. 360,000 SNAP households will be seeing a decrease in their monthly benefit, with some households potentially losing hundreds of dollars in SNAP. Many of these families are likely to turn to additional programs, energy assistance, Medicaid, and heating programs, and allowing them to do so easily, effectively, and automatically will advance health equity and the well-being of our most vulnerable Marylanders. Thank you for your consideration. Maryland Hunger Solutions urges a favorable report on Senate Bill 26.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Ricard Jones. I'm the political director with 1199 SEIU. We represent 12,000 members in the great state of Maryland. We strongly support SB 26 because it will benefit 60,000 uninsured residents who desperately need health coverage. Our workers, they see it firsthand every day that when patients have health insurance, they are more likely to receive the preventive and primary care that they need. They're also less likely to end up in the emergency room with a more severe condition. Our state has one of the longest hospital wait times in this country. Part of that is due to the short staffing crisis, but it's also because a lot of patients wait until they have to go to the emergency room to treat their conditions, which become more expensive and leaves them with a lot of medical debt. This bill will streamline the enrollment process to ensure that people who need the coverage can actually get it. We urge a favorable report on SB 26. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of Senate Finance. I'm Laurel Peltier, and I am the Chair of Energy Advocates, and we work to reduce low-income energy bills. And as the chair, and also you guys have all seen me with Retail Choice, I decided that probably the best thing for me to do was to become an energy navigator and work in the field with people who are struggling to pay their utility bills. So it's pretty interesting to be up at the policy level and then sitting at a desk with the family who has a turn-off notice. And here's what I wanted you to know. When somebody has a cutoff notice and is super low income, like SNAP recipients, they it's stressful, and we're all in the foxhole, and it's not a time with a lot of logic. And this bill is so important and so tactical, and I wanted to share with you how. I decided to start asking everybody, as they're redoing an application, they're bringing all their paperwork back in, and sometimes I'm trying to, fill in the gaps, but make sure that this application gets through the gauntlet that we call OHEP quickly to beat a termination. Because you got to pay this whole bill off, and it can be $1,000, $2,000. So about a year ago, I started asking an interesting question. Hey, are you on SNAP? And 98% of the time, someone says yes. And I think to myself, how did we get here? This person's already gone into an office because they're not going online. That's a whole different discussion. They have already gotten through SNAP, which is a super arduous application, and nobody mentioned energy assistance. Nobody said, how are you doing on your PEPCO bill or your SMECO bill? So here we are 6 months later at the end of winter, in total crisis, redoing the whole thing over again, and this bill would make sure that doesn't happen. It means that anybody who's eligible should get the benefits they want. So thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the sponsor or the panel? Just one question, Senator Augustine. I know you had an amendment in the bill folder. Did you want to speak to that so that we can have that for the record?
Yep. Thank you for that, Madam Chair. Yeah. Yep, I did. I do have an amendment, and thank you so very much for bringing that up. I started to, get focused on the other parts of it, but you're absolutely right. Thank you. There is an amendment, and it makes a lot of sense because Laurel is a part of this too, which is there's a work group that we have that we've been working on, the low-income utility assistance that was put together from the bill that I mentioned to you all from a couple of years ago. But the work is just simply not done. And so what this amendment does is it extends that work group for an additional year and allows for us to continue to work in the area of trying to really make access to some of the services and to help low-income Marylanders who are trying to do the work of accessing and paying off their utility bills. And so that is the amendment, and thank you so much for bringing it back up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure, thank you. Senator Lamb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great bill. I think it's a great idea to be able to help get people the benefits they need a little bit easier and faster. I had a technical question, I guess, with the federal 1115 waiver. So 1115 waiver would be a waiver to CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, to be able to probably share the data and use it in that way to be able to more easily enroll these folks across these different systems. And so is the federal 1115 waiver actually required for this to occur, or is that optional? Does anyone understand whether that, because the fiscal note says that it, to the extent that it may be required, the MDH, the Department of Health, would have to apply for the 1115 waiver. But I'm curious as to whether it's actually required or not. So is this dependent on us applying for the waiver and receiving the approval from CMS to be able to do this? Or is that simply an option that they need to look into? It looks like Massachusetts did apply for this waiver.
Right.
So it sounds like it may be required. I'm not sure, but go ahead.
Well, what I would say is exactly what you just said. I'll have to go and check on whether or not the waiver is required. I do know that Massachusetts, and when they did apply for it. They did. And it was also allowed. So that was another important issue, that it was allowed. An express lane is allowed under the CMS and federal guidelines. Whether or not it extends beyond allowing to, you still have to apply, I'll have to check. But it's not what we're doing has already been done,
right,
is the thing. So we just, in the bill as written, as you mentioned, basically says if we do have to, then you need to go ahead and apply for the waiver.
Right, and I guess to be clear, my question was, is it dependent on us receiving approval from the waiver to be able to do this, or?
Yeah, I'm going
is
to have,
that-
that's what I'm
right,
saying. I'll
yeah,
go and
right,
find
you'll
out
find that
for
out.
certain.
Got it.
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Senator Hayes, then Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Augustine, I'm not sure if you saw the testimony from DHS where they recommended an amendment as it relates to households being included, and then the more broader definition of the utilities. Have you had a chance to review that yet?
No, that must have come in later. I did not see that, Senator. But I'm more than happy to take a look at what they have.
Yeah, I think it's more of a technical amendment and hopefully shouldn't be a problem. But it's just pretty much identifying, households that, the entire household, if there's anyone within that household that qualifies.
Well, what I will share with you, and I'm doing some research on this now, we are trying to, and this goes again to what Senator Lamb was saying too. I am doing some research on some of the federal requirements to make sure that what we're proposing will work for all Medicaid recipients, because there is some language that we're trying to work through, like you're saying, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to mirror, I would assume, just based on the conversations I've had, they're mirroring the federal language right now. And so we know we're going to work through that, for
Right.
sure.
And DHMH in their testimony also spoke to like the Massachusetts model and
Yeah.
ELE, and that it covered children but not adults. But they also submitted a list of amendments to pretty much strike the word enroll and look at renewals as well. So I don't know if you had a chance to see that, but
That is the intent, yep. And so we're going to work through those for certain.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Ellis, you can
Yeah,
proceed.
thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Augustine, for this bill and for the witnesses. So I have a question that have to do with when we increase assistance for families, individuals in certain areas, it counts as income for certain other assistance and offset sometimes, and hopefully we can fix that. But if we have a one-stop shop like this, and so family is eligible for medical assistance and automatically get, say, energy assistance, that amount of additional assistance, would that in any other area count against any other benefit that per individual family might be receiving? And if that's the case, we might have to fix that loophole.
I don't know the answer to that. Maybe members of the panel may know whether or not some of these benefits are being treated, how they're being treated as income.
I can speak to the SNAP side of things. Energy assistance, Medicaid, anything of that nature is not counted as income for food benefits.
Okay. And so food benefits, how about any other benefits? I know some of these count against, let's say, housing benefits, and we had a bill here earlier, which you were probably not privy to. And so there are some benefits that are affected. If you could reach out to us with that, so we don't want to have offsets as we increase these.
Can you just reiterate for me, Senator, so I know what I'm looking up? I'm looking up make sure that these benefits aren't treated, or understand that these benefits are treated as income in other areas?
Not treated as income, to create an offset.
I'm saying that's what you want, but the concern is if they are treated as income.
Exactly.
So that's what we need to find out first.
Yeah, if you could, yeah.
Okay.
And so we don't want to have families, say, with this bill, eligible, and they get these benefits, and hey, guess what? We have to cut housing assistance, or we have to cut this because your income went up.
Yep.
We count energy assistance as income, and I know the answer was for one benefit, but there are other benefits. So we wanted to kind of look at these from a really comprehensive perspective. And if we can avoid any unintended consequences, that would be really good.
Okay, we'll work on that for certain.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any additional questions for the sponsor or this panel, so thank you very much for your testimony. We're going to call forward Lee Hudson, Laura Hale, Allison Taylor. Good afternoon, and you can proceed.
Good afternoon. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for hearing our testimony. I want to adjust an impression that might have been left yesterday when I was with you. In spite of what Mr. Celentano said, I am not God. I am Lee Hudson. I'm here from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. We're a faith community scattered across the state from Red House to Ocean City. The programs, I'll avoid all the alphabet soup as the sponsor did. The programs were passed, implemented in order to help those who are eligible for them, but it is a barrier for those individuals to achieve that end. What I'm going to say here in oral testimony is that Senate Bill 26 is something of a trifecta in prophetic goals that come out of the Hebraic tradition, which is to feed, to heal, to sustain. So my community has an interest in access to health care and sufficient livelihood. That's why I'm here. If we can get eligibility for the programs that are intended to help people aligned with the categorical eligibility, then the benefits that are available will find those who need them rather than the other way around. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Allison Taylor. I'm here on behalf of Kaiser Permanente today. Kaiser Permanente serves 120,000 Marylanders in the Medicaid program, and we spend a considerable amount of time trying to enroll our Medicaid members in other programs, including Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And so in some ways that's easy for us because the eligibility requirements are fairly well aligned, but on the other side, there can be, it can be difficult to complete those applications, especially for these vulnerable people. So we see a real need for something like this to streamline this process for our members and the other folks in the state. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Laura Hale. I'm the Director of Government Relations with the American Heart Association. We urge strong support for this legislation, for all of the things that have been said. But for us, we really see this as healthcare is truly essential, as well as SNAP and many of the other programs, to looking at the whole health of an individual. We know that those, especially those who are low income, suffer as well for time poverty and being able to make lives just a little bit easier. And so for all of that, me too, and you have our support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions for this panel, so thank you all very much for your testimony. Enjoy the rest of your day. We're going to turn to our virtual witnesses on this bill, beginning with Cindy Carter. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee. I'm Cindy Carter. I'm the co-founder of the Critical Medical Needs Program and Executive Director of Cancer Support Foundation. I'm here speaking in favor of Senate Bill 26. For 18 years now, I've been trying to work with state agencies to provide grants for our clients. We work with some of the most vulnerable people in the state. Our clients rarely have one need. They have multiple services they need, multiple applications, multiple processes to work through, but much of the time it's the same basic information. The lack of customer service with these agencies has made a major problem for our clients. Sometimes our clients are able to get into the SNAP program or food stamps, but we find they're not referred to the Energy Assistance Program. Thus, they're kind of blocked out of getting that. So many of these agencies' services are working in silos. The system for energy assistance does not work well and has not for years. Our clients are fighting for their lives and still trying to get the various grants they need. Try doing an online application or call an office for assistance, and you will understand why the denial rate for this grant is so high. The 4 areas of assistance that this bill lists as pathways into energy assistance just make common sense. As a former accountant, I can only imagine the administrative cost savings of this data sharing to take care of multiple grants. I've been down there for many years about the same issues with getting into energy assistance grants, and unfortunately, it is not any easier. This law seems to be very effective and a very effective solution that respects the need for proper documentation and verification of the client's situation. I'm asking for a favorable report for SB 26 to provide category eligibility for energy assistance grants. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any questions, so thank you for your testimony. We're
Thank
now
you.
going to move to Melanie Townsend Diggs. Good afternoon. If you can unmute for us. There you go.
Yes, ma'am. There I am.
Uh-oh. We lost Melanie Townsend Diggs. Welcome back.
I don't know what is going on.
You're back.
Yes,
You can
I am.
proceed.
Yes. Chair Griffith and members of the Senate Finance Committee, thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 26. I'm currently the South Area Director for the Prince George's County Memorial Library System, and I have served on the board of Families USA, a national consumer health care advocacy group. I fully support this legislation, which would reduce barriers for Marylanders to get the health care services they need. I personally was enrolled in Medicaid during a difficult time for my family, and I appreciated the people who helped me get connected and enrolled because I did not know that I was eligible. As a librarian, I have also assisted people who had trouble navigating the healthcare system. We in Maryland need to do everything that we can to make sure that everyone who's able to, is possible to be enrolled, to access the coverage for which they are already eligible. This bill would help break down barriers to access because Marylanders who have already gone through the process of enrolling in SNAP will be automatically enrolled into Medicaid. And by doing so, reducing the unnecessary paperwork for SNAP recipients to remain enrolled in Medicaid. This bill would also help Marylanders get connected with utility services and help seniors enrolled in SNAP, making this bill like a one-stop shop for beneficial services to a community in need. Thank you very much for your consideration, and I urge a favorable report for Senate Bill 26. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll now move on to Jake Whitaker. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Jake Whitaker, Director of Government Affairs at the Maryland Hospital Association, here to testify in support of Senate Bill 26. We believe that widely accessible health coverage is critical to hospitals providing Marylanders with the best care possible. Senate Bill 26 supports this goal and the goals of Maryland's unique total cost of care model. Under this model, Maryland hospitals strive for lower costs and improved population health. As a result, hospitals reach beyond their four walls to keep people well and improve the health of communities they serve by helping address social factors and determinants that influence people's health. So for the aforementioned reasons, we respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 26, and I'm happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Don't see any questions, so thank you for your testimony. We'll now turn to Shane Dizzard.
Thank you. My name is Jane Dizzard, and I submitted, if that's all right, I submitted written testimony. I'm a volunteer with Progressive Maryland Healthcare Task Force, and I'm here to emphasize the importance of SB 26, which all the previous speakers have so excellently described. So I just want to add my little piece. I didn't realize until I worked as a community health nurse after working in a hospital. I've been doing this for like over 30 years, how difficult and stressful it is to apply for assistance. The forms and questions are confusing, much documentation is needed, and sometimes it's really hard to get, especially if somebody has to go to their employer who may or may not be cooperative with getting a letter written. People have to take unpaid time off work to help complete the application. They might have to take 1 or 2 buses with kids in tows in the winter to go to a social service office. And as someone else mentioned, now that the applications are online, it's even more difficult. You have to have access to the internet. You have to understand the terminology and the process of uploading documents. And when I worked with people in the homes, a lot of times they don't have it, so they have to meet at a library or go someplace, or I'm trying to do it on my iPad, which I'm not as good at as on a laptop. And even I, with many degrees, have problems with it, but I can call someone in social services to get help direct, because I have a direct line. I began to realize that applying for medical assistance is actually a health hazard because of all the stress involved. And people are ashamed, embarrassed to have to apply for assistance, let alone get help for it. So many people don't go the second time. Once they've been approved for, they're not going to try again. So I please support SB 26. It's so important.
Thank you so much. I don't see any questions, so thank you for your testimony. We're going to move to our final witness on this bill, Steve Rayab?
Robbie,
okay, thank you.
thank you for having me. Chair Griffith and members of the Senate Finance Committee, thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 26. My name is Steve Robbie. I'm a resident of Annapolis and president of OpinionWorks, a public opinion research firm. I'd like to speak to the provision in this bill that would automatically establish a program to enroll people in Medicaid and the Maryland Children's Health Program based on SNAP eligibility. I'd like to share observations from past focus group work that we undertook for the Maryland Citizens Health Initiative to understand remaining barriers to coverage facing people who qualify for free or low-cost health care but who do not apply. I'd like to speak to the mindset and barriers that we heard. Observations made by uninsured Marylanders in that inquiry, I would suggest, may also be relevant here to SB 26. Participants in that study were clear that they would be more likely to have health coverage if barriers to entry were removed. For example, in that project, we tested the possibility of signing up for health coverage at the same time and place that people apply for unemployment benefits, and participants were excited about that idea. Let me give you just 2 of the most important barriers uninsured Marylanders cited. Number 1, fear of an onerous application process. People admitted that their perception of a difficult process keeps them from even getting started. One person said, I am definitely one of those people. When something seems like it is taking a little bit too long or I hit a speed bump, sometimes I get a little discouraged and I might just go into a totally different direction. Number 2, just don't know the process or don't know that they're eligible. One person said, I don't know if you need to apply or what are the requirements to apply. I wanted to apply and I should have done research to find out more about it. I really don't know that part. Based on this research, I can say confidently that this bill effectively removes key barriers to health coverage for uninsured Marylanders and will result in broader coverage. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Looks like no questions for you, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Colleagues, that will conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 26. We'll now turn to Senate Bill 52. Senator Elfreth presenting Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Programs Waiver, Diapers, and Menstrual Hygiene Products. Good afternoon,
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and thank you, Madam Chair, for your grace so I could chair a budget subcommittee before I came up here. It was perfect timing. Members of the committee, Sarah Elfreth representing District 30, Anne Arundel County, presenting Senate Bill 52, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program Waiver, Diapers, and Menstrual Hygiene Products. I feel like the first sentence of my testimony is a little bit of alphabet soup, but here to talk about SNAP benefits and WIC benefits as it relates to our Department of Human Services, Department of Health, and ultimately the USDA. So, like many of you, particularly in the midst of COVID and post-COVID and with rising inflation rates, many of my constituents are facing tighter budgets. And what is can often be one of the last things folks can afford are still very essential products, those being diapers and menstrual hygiene products. This is an equity issue in a lot of ways. This is about keeping babies healthy. This is about keeping kids in their seats at school and people being able to go to work when they're experiencing menstruation. And yet they are, in many cases, for many families, too expensive to afford during these times. So what this bill simply says is that should the USDA open up a waiver, that our Department of Human Services and our Department of Health would apply for that waiver to allow SNAP benefits to be used for the purchase of menstrual hygiene products and diapers. We anticipate this waiver at the federal level, and this bill would simply set up our two agencies to be able to take advantage of that waiver and then allow for our families to use their SNAP benefits, if they so choose, to purchase diapers and menstrual hygiene products. There is one technical amendment, Madam Chair, drafting error. We misstated the departments when it comes to WIC, so we have that amendment in your packets, and we'd ask that you consider that amendment. You have, I know I'm the last today, so I'm not going to have a huge panel, but you have a lot of written testimony from Maryland Catholic Conference, Maryland Food Bank, Kennedy Krieger, many of the partners that we all work with in our communities to fight poverty. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Governor Moore's State of the State speech yesterday, focused on eliminating child poverty. I think this bill, again, if the feds allow us to apply for this waiver, will help us together tackle ending child poverty here in Maryland. So with that, Madam Chair, I ask for a favorable report with that technical amendment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions for the sponsor? Senator Lamb.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Elfreth. So it looks as though USDA currently does not make this available, right?
Yes.
And that's in MDH's testimony as well. So this is all dependent on USDA opening up the availability of the state being able to apply for a unique waiver to qualify to extend these benefits to these types of products, right?
Yes, we are anticipating that they might in the near future, probably will not line up with the time we are in session. So allowing for, if that waiver were to become available, we would take advantage of it.
So you're hearing kind of rumblings that the feds, USDA in particular, may open this up?
Rumblings, yes, with our federal partners, yes.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. I don't see any additional questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sponsor, Senator Elfreth. We have one witness signed up, Pam Casemeyer. Good afternoon.
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Pam Casemeyer, and I'll be exceedingly brief because this is such a simple, direct, but such a fabulous idea or piece of legislation from the perspective of my clients, which include the State Medical Society, the Academy of Pediatrics, federally qualified health centers, obstetricians and gynecologists. These healthcare practitioners see the impact of the challenge that people who are unable to afford these products but also have SNAP and WIC benefits, the impact it has upon them. The great thing about this legislation, not to repeat it, but as Senator Elfreth said, all this does is say departments, if a waiver is available, you have to apply. It doesn't create some new state obligation or some new state benefit, but ensures if there's an opportunity to provide these services, we don't miss that opportunity. And because, for better or worse, I think on any given day we would pick one word or the other, we're only here 90 days. This puts a structure in place so should that waiver opportunity become available, they'll take advantage of it in a timely manner. So with that, I think it's a great opportunity to potentially, and the cost implications, WIC and SNAP are federal programs, so the funding and economic impact is not tremendous. So with that, we'd urge a favorable report, I guess with the technical amendment that was offered by the senator.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions from the committee, so thank you for your testimony. That concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 52. Colleagues, we're going to take a very brief stretch break and then have a brief voting session. So stay close.